Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome back to another Catskull Academy lesson for EVE Online. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the fitting screen and teaching you all of the tips and tricks that you'll need to make the most out of this very powerful tool. Now, whenever I talk about the fitting screen, there are always some Pythor purists who come into the comment section down below and tell me that, oh, you should be using Pythor. It's such a powerful tool. It's the most potent thing you could ever use. In fact, there's one person who keeps cropping up on my Discord who tells me that Pythor is actually even more important for EVE Online players to have installed than the game itself. I don't know why Pythor has such a fanatical user base. I think it is a powerful tool. I just think that you don't really need it 99.9% of the time. And if you're not sure what Pythor is, well, subscribe to the channel. I will have a video talking about the Pythor fitting tool for EVE Online in a future video. But for now, we're just using the in-game resources to save you having to download and worry about additional things. If we can get it done with the fitting tool, well, there's a lot of the game that is absolutely fine with just the tools available. Pythor, great little addition, but wholly unnecessary for most of the player base. Anyway, in today's lesson, as I said, we're going to be talking about the fitting screen. I'm going to show you how to fit a ship using it, how to copy and paste, how to search for different functions, and what all of the different bits of the screen mean. If you are new to EVE Online, by the way, make sure you are checking out the Catskull Academy playlist linked on my channel at the end of this video and in the description down below, so there's 3 ways you can find it, to learn more about EVE Online. And consider coming to join the Catskull Community Discord as well. It's a great place to ask questions about the game and get responses from like-minded capsuleers who are more than happy to teach everything they know. Finally, if you're fairly new to the game as well, I do have a referral link you can click in the description. That will earn you 1 million free skill points if you haven't used a referral link before, and it gives me a nice little kickback as well, so thank you to everyone who does that. So first things first, we're going to open the fitting screen. You can either click on the icon in your Neocom, or you can use the default key binding of Alt-F, and it will bring up this screen here. Now, there is a little toggle here on the left-hand side that opens up some additional things. This may be closed by default. Don't worry too much about it. I'm going to leave it open for now, just so I can get the angle of the, the size of the window all sorted for me editing this video. First of all, then, let's have an overview of the fitting screen in general. Now, you should be familiar with what all of this stuff here is in the middle. This is your different slots, your high slots, which tend to be weapons and high energy modules, your medium slots, which are medium energy modules like shield tanking, capacitor stability, propulsion, and electronic warfare, and your low energy slots, which are things like armor tanking, weapons upgrades, and similar stuff to that. Of course, you then have your rigs on the left-hand side, which allow you to modify bits of your ship that way. And if you're looking at something like a Tech 3 cruiser, you'll also have the subsystems here in the bottom left that you can use. Now, ignoring all of this, because I'm pretty sure you know what most of this means. If you're not aware, by the way, we do have, obviously, our hardpoints up here as well, so you can see how many turret hardpoints or missile hardpoints are available on a ship. You do also have these little buttons here. This allows you to group and ungroup weapons, but if we go to simulate, these change. When you're simulating, you can open a radial menu, and this gives you the ability to activate all of the modules, online all of the modules, overheat the modules to show what that does when it changes it, even unfit, unload, and offline all of the modules. If we click offline all the modules, for example, you'll see it turns them all off. We lose all of our DPS. I can then go back in here, and I can online all the modules to get that back up and done, and heck, activate them if I need to as well, just so that you can see that they are now running. And you can do this for all of the different mid slots and low slots, and just play around with things. Now, on the right-hand side here, we start with capacitor. This is going to show you how much capacitor your ship actually has in terms of its actual capacity, how big it is, and what its recharge rate is. This means 183.75 seconds is from 0% to 100%. Remember, capacitor does not recharge at a constant rate, with the fastest recharge rate actually being around 25-27%, which means it recharges very slow at 0%, increases its recharge speed as it approaches 25-27%, then it slows down again the higher the capacitor gets. Bear that in mind, because it means that when you have a certain amount of capacitor stability, it might be at lower levels that you are actually stable. Here you can see on the left-hand side where it is actually sustainable at with everything running. Currently in this particular fit, 73.7%. And you can then toggle stuff on and off to see how that would affect the capacitor. You can see without the shield booster running, we're actually cap stable all the way up here at 93.5%, so on and so forth. Delta is basically your excess capacitor recharge rate, which means if you have all of your modules running, how much capacitor recharge is still capable of occurring over your basic. Essentially, think of this as how much neutralization needs to hit you before you start losing capacitor. We then have our offense tab, and these can be opened and closed. This is going to show us the amount of DPS, that is damage per second, and this is a total that includes both your high slot weapons and any drones that you have alongside each other. It's your total effective DPS. The one on the right here is basically including your reload time. So if you have just your, if you imagine that you're shooting for the duration that you have ammunition, it's going to be, in this case, a total of 779 DPS. If you were to extend that out across an extended period of time that's going to include multiple reloads, that will actually average out to 754.8 DPS, and that's accounting for that reload time. The second number is the Alpha Strike. This is how much damage you do per shot. If you activate all of your weapons in one go, how much damage is it capable of doing in one hit? Obviously, you then have your Alpha Strike divided by the amount of time it takes to activate each of your turrets or missiles or whatever, and that will give you your overall damage per second. We then have our Defense tab. At the top right, this shows us our effective hit points. This is not actual hit points. This is modified based on how much you have in regards to your resistances. Now, this means that, for example, here, if I turn off the assault damage control, you can see things are a little bit lower here. If I activate the assault damage control, it shoots up all of those resistances, and my effective hit points do change. So you can see that there we've got 15,000, nearly 16,000 until I activate the assault damage, when I then have effectively 56,000 hit points. Worth bearing in mind that that is taking resistances into account, meaning that the actual damage that you take obviously is being reduced, therefore you kind of have more hit points. It's kind of hard to explain, but hopefully that makes some sense. You can see your different resistances here, how many hit points you have actually in each of those sections. So your shield hit points, your armor hit points, and your structure hit points. We also have our shield recharge time. Again, this is based on from 0 hit points up to 100% hit points, 937 seconds in this case. You can then also see up here, active defenses. We can toggle this to see different things. Currently, you're seeing the shield boost rate. That means with the shield booster active, that is how much shield boosting we're actually getting. You'll see if I turn the shield booster off, that goes to 0. If I activate it, 74.7 hit points per second. If I overheat it, 96.7. And so you can toggle that to what you need. We can then go to passive shield recharge, and you can see how much shield you're getting per second just from your shields recharging themselves naturally. Not much in this case, but obviously it is something, and it does also work quite nicely if you're going for a passive shield recharge fit, as I've shown on various different ships around there, like the Healer, the Rattlesnake. I think I did it for the Mamba as well. I know the Panther, I did a passive recharge fit. We have our armor repair rate. If you've got armor repair as operational, it'll show you how many hit points per second you're getting there, and your hull repair rate as well. It's worth noting that those are based on your actual shield hit points, etc. So I have a total of 2,250 shield hit points, of which I can boost 74.7 per second. Now, you might think that 74.7, that's not a lot when I've got 56,000, but remember, that is effective hit points taking into account your resistances. Now, this is where Pythor will differ. Pythor does allow you to actually see how many effective hit points you're regenerating per second with your shield booster. To me, though, I just don't think that's particularly necessary information for the average person. I think this is a useful number. If you know that you need at least 120 hit points per second of shield boosting, you can just aim for 120 hit points per second. You don't necessarily need to take this into account, and the more that you play with these ships and take them out in practice, the more that'll make sense to you. Targeting, this shows you your lock-on range, so how far you can be away from something if you want to lock onto it. You can see down here your sensor strength and what type it is, whether it's LiDAR, radar, magnetocentric, or that kind of thing there, so you know which kind of ECM you're vulnerable to. We'll talk about that more in a future video. You can see your signature radius, how big your ship appears to other ships, how quickly they can lock onto you, that kind of thing there. How hard you are to hit also comes into play with signature radius. You then have your scan resolution. This plays into the target signature radius and will essentially calculate lock-on time. The higher your scan resolution and the higher their signature radius, the faster overall lock-on time is. If you've got a low scan resolution or they've got a low signature radius, it's going to take longer to lock on. Then finally, we have the number of maximum locked targets. Here you can see that this particular ship can only lock onto 6 targets. Even if my skills actively allow me to lock onto 8 or 9 or however many, I can still only ever lock onto 6 because that's all the ship will ever allow me to do. Then we have our navigation. Navigation gives you your maximum velocity. This is how fast your ship moves in a straight line in space. Again, that is currently with the afterburner active, so you can toggle that on and off to see how that affects. With no afterburner, 370 meters per second. With it on, 930 meters per second. That gives you just an idea of what that afterburner is actually doing for you. We then have our mass. This is important, especially if you're going to be going through wormholes, to know how much mass you're going to be putting on the connections. It also plays in with the agility rating, which we'll see in a moment, to give you actual align times. We then have our warp speed. This is the maximum velocity you can achieve when in warp. This is not how quickly you achieve warp, it is what your maximum velocity is when in warp. The higher this is, then the faster you can move across systems. Of course, when you activate warp and you're going across a 300 AU system, like Thera, then the higher your AU per second, the faster you'll clear that distance. We then have our inertia modifier. This is combined with your mass to give an agility rating. Basically, this is one of those things that you want a lower one of these where possible, because it's going to allow your ship to turn faster based on your mass. Worth pointing out at this point as well, things like micro warp drives and afterburners do affect your mass. I know that's not really real-world science, but it's how the game calculates things. This means with an afterburner on, you will realign slower than if you have your afterburner turned off. You can also see this at the bottom right here with your align time. This is static. If you are sitting at 0 meters per second, it does not matter what direction you are facing. Common misconception is that you need to point towards what you're doing. No, you only need to be facing it whilst moving. EVE Online uses basically inertia arrows, velocity arrows. So in order to achieve warp, you need to be doing 75% of your maximum velocity within 5 degrees angle of the target. If you are moving at 0 meters per second, you do not have a velocity arrow. And if you're at 0 meters per second, even if the target is directly behind you, your velocity arrow immediately starts growing in that direction. This means from 0, my warp speed here will be 5.47 seconds, whether I am looking at the target or whether it is behind me. I know it looks like your ship turns on the spot and then warps. It doesn't actually work like that in the game. The actual ship graphics are unimportant. Your actual ship is just a point in space, a literal pinhead in space that has no actual facing. If you are moving at 0 meters per second, you are not aligned in any direction. You are therefore aligned in all directions. If, however, you are moving in a particular direction, then yes, you are going to take time to slow down, turn, and re-angle that velocity. I'll probably talk about this in an actual warp mechanics video later on, but for now, just understand that align time is based on you being at a standstill. This means even with the afterburner on, if I'm at 0 meters per second, I'm better to have the afterburner off because I will warp faster. Do not activate an afterburner if you are trying to warp quickly, basically. Same with micro warp drive. Then we have our drone panel. This tells us how much DPS we're getting from our drones. We can see what the megabits per second of bandwidth is. We can see how many drones we can have active, and we can see what our drone control range is. This all is, all useful information with drones. Obviously, 25 megabits per second, you'll learn that standard light drones are 5 megabits, medium drones are 10 megabits, and heavy drones are 25 megabits. This means this particular vessel could have 5 light drones, or 1 heavy drone, or 2 medium drones and a light drone. That is your different options of what you can have with a maximum of 5 active. 60 kilometer, that is how far away from the ship the drones can be if you want to be able to reallocate instructions to them. If your drones are set to aggressive and they're outside of your drone control range, they will still fly around and do their thing. You just cannot issue orders directly to them. You can also click Manage Drones here and it opens a little box at the bottom. You can drop drones into here, you can remove them, you can turn them on and off and select which drones you want active in order to see your drone DPS. So here you can see I've deactivated all drones. If I open that again, no drone simulated because I clicked the cross. We'll come to fix that later on. Then, along the bottom here, you can see an estimated value of the ship, and mousing over this tells you which modules are worth the most, and you can see based on estimated market values. This may be accurate or inaccurate depending on where you're buying your stuff from. We then have our CPU and our power grid. These, of course, are the amount of modules that we can fit. Basically, every module has a CPU and a power grid requirement. You must have so much CPU and power grid remaining on your ship in order to fit that. Now here you can see that we have a total of 500 CPU available on the Vagabond here. I'm using 98.8 of it. 98.8 remaining, available there, so you can kind of get an idea of how much space is available for you to fit other things. Same with power grid, we've got a total power grid on the right hand side and the amount of remaining on the left hand side. These can be affected using skills like CPU management, power grid management, and of course things like weapons upgrades and advanced weapons upgrades are going to reduce the amount of power grid that your weapons actually use to fit to the ship. So it's kind of a limiting factor. You'll find that things that are ship modules that are size dependent have power grid requirements. Therefore, like a small shield booster compared to a medium shield booster or a large shield booster, the large shield booster will require more power grid than the medium shield booster, which will have more power grid requirements than a small shield booster. This is how the game limits which modules you can fit to your ship. When it's stuff that's not size sensitive, so for example things like gyro stabilizers, multi-spectrum shield hardeners, they don't have a small, medium or large, you'll find that those are limited then by power grid. Those are modules that use power grid, and that's how the game limits which of those you'll be able to fit to a particular ship. We then have in the bottom left here our drone bay that you can open and close this, same as the managing drones we saw earlier, and we've got the cargo hold. This allows you to open and close and see what is currently in the ship's cargo hold as you have it simulated. Now, simulating can be done by right-clicking on a ship and hitting simulate. You can come straight into here, into the fitting window, and you can open up the browser. On the left-hand side, we have hulls and fits. Here, you can search for different ships. So, for example, I can open up the Curse, load this, and it will bring in all of the modules here that I have for this particular fit. Once I've come up with a fit, I can hit Save As, and this will bring up a menu where I can then name it and save it, and that will add it into my little library here of different ships I can use. If I'm currently in that ship, I can hit Fit Ship, and it will fit it as per the simulation based on modules in the item hanger at the station you're in. I can also go to Browse, and this brings up like personal fittings. We can look at like Corporation and Alliance here as well to get an idea of different things available that our friends or corporation may have shared for different fittings. Again, you just load those in the same as we saw before. Now, once you've got a particular hull that you're happy to fit, we can go across to hardware. Now, you can use these toggles along the top here to change whether you're looking at high slots, medium slots, low slots, rigs, drones, this kind of thing, and then you can either just drag and drop them into the situation here, or, so for example, if I unequip this medium ghoul compact energy Nosferatu, what I can then do is click in here, and that will highlight high slots, or I can toggle it over here, and if I type in medium ghoul, you'll see it gives us this option. Now, I can either drag and drop this in like so, or I can unfit it. I can drag it directly into the exact slot that I want it, or we can just double click it. All of those work as a great way of getting the stuff in. Okay, that's all very well and good, Benzie, but this is terrible. Like, we can't see our DPS. We've got our drones in here, but I've got no ammunition in any of these slots at the top. Well, this is where we go to charges. Going into charges, we can then click on the weapon, and it will give us an option of the different ammo that we can load into it. Again, double click that, and boom, it's all loaded in there. And if I want to change that to, say, javelins, you can see there, and we can now see what the range of those would be, 30-kilometer range, and with this much DPS, go back to the range, we can see it's now much higher DPS, but it's only at 17 kilometers. That's how you load different things in, and the same is true for scripts. If you're using command bursts or things like guidance computers or tracking computers, that kind of stuff, all these charges are found here. Going back to the modules panel, you can see you can either search, like I did before, for the medium ghoul, or if I wanted that medium ghoul and I couldn't remember what it was called, I can look for it in this list. So we've got the high slots highlighted here, and I can have a look up and down and see what different things we have. Is that under electronic warfare? Nope, I can never remember where they hide this one. Electronics and sensor upgrades? No. Engineering equipment? There we are. Energy neutralizers, energy Nosferatu, medium size, medium ghoul. This actually means I can have a look at different ones. So if I wanted to see, will a medium energy Nosferatu 2 fit? Yes, it will. You can also see, if I leave that moused over, if you look at where it says capacitor in the top right, that's gone green. That means it's an improvement on what it would be without having it fitted. Whereas if you look at CPU and power grid, you can see what those will reduce to if I fit this module. So if I now go up to the compact, for example, you'll see that there is more CPU and power grid left available there. So 50.7 PG, 66.8 CPU, whereas the compact would leave me with 71.8 CPU and 90.7 PG. The difference obviously being, if I look at the capacitor stability, 17.1 gigajoules per second with the ghoul, whereas it's 18.3 with the medium energy. So I can then double click that and it'll add it into the fitting. Now you can browse this like you want here, going up and down, taking a look at your different things, picking all of your different stuff. It's a great way to just have a look at all the different kinds of things that you might want to fit to a ship. Great way to find modules that you may not even know exist, right? Really cool little way of just browsing and trying out different things in your fit. And this works for all different modules. You can see you can open and close and toggle all of these different things. So like here, if I want to go for rigs, I can have a look at the different types of rigs and what I might want to fit to this particular vessel. Finally, when it comes to this stuff, let's have a look at drones. Because currently, I've got 5 Vesper 2s. Let's clear all of those out, and you'll see the drone DPS has just gone to 0. If I now come into the drones panel here, which is by toggling this, I can go into combat drones, and we're going to look at medium drones, and we want Vesper 2s. So now if I double click, you'll see that's added 1 into the drone bay. Double click again, we've got 2, 3, 4, 5. That now gives us all 5. We've got a DPS, and you can see they're in the drone bay there. If you had more space in the drone bay, which we do, I can add in Valkyries. So let's add in a load of extra Valkyries as well. You can see the drone bay has gone up to 100. Now, if I toggle these off, I can toggle these on. Like so. And that'll tell me that's 251 DPS for the Valkyrie 2s, but if I were to reduce those all the way down, I click 5 of these, 289.6 DPS for the Vesper 2s. Really easy way just to see what your drones are actively doing in regards to the DPS output. Obviously, there's more to drones than that. They've got effective hit point differences, they've got application differences, movement speed differences, that kind of thing. But for straight DPS, you see that effectively there. Now, once you've got a fit that you like, obviously, you can save it, as we showed earlier. Save it, and boom, off it goes in. If you go save as well, if you're docked in somewhere like Jita, you can hit buy. And if you go buy, it'll bring all of this up and give you a cost of how much that'll cost to buy everything off the market where you are. If it's got these lines through it, it means it's not available at the station you're currently in. Therefore, I can't actually buy any of this because I'm currently based in a wormhole station, right? It's not going to work. So, if I come back out to all of this and go to this little arrow, we have import and export. Here, I can hit copy to clipboard, and then I can paste that into a YouTube video description. I can paste that into something like a Notepad if I want to save a load of these fits on my computer. And once I've got a fit saved, so here, for example, I'm now going to quickly jump across to Notepad. I'm going to highlight a fit that I've already had available elsewhere, come back into the game. We're now going to go import from clipboard. And you'll see this then loads that fit to the side here, gives us an idea of what we're looking at on this particular fit. And if I then go simulate, boom, it's going to load that straight back in. Again, like before, we've got no charges here, so I'm going to go to charges on the left-hand side. We're going to add in some hail, and we're going to add in the Sisters Core scanner probes. You can then go to save as, and you can see what it's got here, which will include charges as linked in the fit itself, and anything else that happens to be in the cargo. And when you do go to buy, it's worth noting that you can actually cross any of these off that you don't want to buy. So perhaps you are looking at this ship and you don't want the boosters, and we can get rid of that. Oh, you've already got a mobile tracks unit, we can get rid of that. You can select which bits you actually want to buy, and it will modify the cost accordingly. Anyway, folks, that is how to use the fitting screen. There's really not that much to it. It's an incredibly potent and powerful tool, and I do wish you all the best using it. Yes, Pythor is also an incredibly powerful tool, and I will do a video on it eventually. But for the vast majority of players, the information that you see here is more than enough, and being able to do this in-game is more than sufficient. Yes, Pythor means you don't have to log into EVE Online. You can just do your thing from your desktop. I like being in-game because I can then ask questions a little bit easier to my corporation and be like, hey guys, what's going on here, right? Yeah, I prefer to do it in-game personally than Pythor. Pythor is a useful tool, but I do not think it is the be-all and end-all of the ship fitting equation. Anyway, let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one in the comment section down below. If you think I've missed something or not talked about it, drop it down there as well. Best comments get pinned, and I will share those with other people, and if I ever update this video, that's information I know to include for next time. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit subscribe and ding that notification bell to get updated when more videos like this come along. And if you do want to support the channel and help me to keep putting out content like this, please consider heading across to my Patreon page or my PayPal tip jar, where you can drop a small donation. I'm also going to be opening up YouTube channel memberships very, very soon, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching this one right the way through to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!